of run line and extra innings, automatic runner at second base. You're just one swing away, my friend.
Yeah, this is when you love it. You already got the hard work. Nothing, PJ, I always say nothing is more precious in sports than first base, but they want to give you second base and extra innings. I'm happy. But situations like this where I need to run line, give me a walk-off bomb now and we're all good.
Yeah, the run line with the new rules in baseball and extra innings definitely helps you out if you have that run line. So that's good, Goo. I hope the Yankees come through for you.
It is PJ Glasser, our BetQL statistician, joining us here as he does virtually every week here on Sunday's Bets with Dibs and Guru. Always great to have you, PJ. And all eyes tonight on the NBA Finals Game 2. Boston Celtics with a fourth quarter flurry to take down the Warriors in Game 1. What do you think from a betting standpoint going into Game 2 tonight? What really stands out for you?
Guys, I think this is going to be an under kind of game. We know Golden State's desperation tonight. They have to win this game. And because of that, I think these two defenses, who are the two best defenses in the regular season, I think they're going to shine tonight. I especially love the first half under. Game 1, we know how Curry came out in that first quarter. Boston was always hanging around. They were knocking down shots too. The teams combined for 110 points in that first half. And it seems like they were shooting the ball really well. Tonight's first half total is 105.5. So I would have looked to attack that under tonight. I think that's a good look.
I like that, PJ. We saw Klay Thompson have 15 points, and since he's been back, it's incredible that he's back. Okay, but the fact that he hasn't been able to be that consistent, like his old self, right now he's at 19.5 points minus 113. And I'm thinking because he only had 15, I looked at his body language at the presser yesterday. I don't know if you've seen him, but I think he's going for it. He's never not shooting the ball. What do you think about Klay Thompson, 19.5 points, minus 113? I'm leaning over.
I like where you're thinking, Goo. I think that could be an over. We saw Wiggins was the guy who had 20 points in Game 1. I think that could definitely be Klay tonight. The guy I'm looking at, though, guys, is Draymond Green, and I think this is a Draymond kind of game. His point total right now is 8.5. I would attack that over right now.
Wow.
We saw in Game 1, Draymond had 12 shot attempts. After Curry went crazy in that first quarter, Boston really adjusted, and their mentality was, we're going to make everybody else beat us but Steph. And that gave Draymond a lot of range. He was 0 for 4 from three-point range. They're leaving him open from deep. I think Draymond's mentality in Game 1, he was coming in and he was going to be the facilitator like he normally was. Get his Splash Brothers going, get Poole going, let Wiggins get going. Tonight, I think he's going to have a scorer's mentality. I would take some alternative point props on Draymond. Maybe look at 14 plus, 16 plus, maybe even sprinkle a 20 plus. I think this is going to be a Draymond Green night, guys. I like him tonight for props.
Wow, 20 plus. You'd probably get damn near 8-1 odds, I would imagine, on that. But, I mean, not only because Draymond's coming off a 2 for 12, but Draymond in general, and I mentioned this earlier, PJ, when he gets just 8 points, the Warriors are virtually unbeatable. 27-5 this year in the regular season and the postseason when he gets just that 8-point plateau. We saw against Dallas, he was really erupting. We'll see if he's able to get it going tonight. One bet, I want to run this by you because I threw this to Goo earlier. Warriors in the first quarter. I think Golden State comes out assertive tonight. They're -2 in the first quarter against Boston. What do you think about that?
I like that as well. I like the thought process of Golden State being the desperate team at home, feed off that crowd, jump on Boston early. We've seen the Celtics throughout these playoffs. They win a big game, and then coming off that, sometimes they get smacked in the face in the first quarter. Miami did that to them a couple times. Milwaukee did that to them a couple times. I think Golden State could do the same thing. They were great in Game 1 and Game 3. They were great in the first quarter and the third quarter in Game 1, and then Boston was great in the second quarter and the fourth quarter in Game 1. I think Golden State's going to be great in the first, third, and the fourth quarter tonight. I think Boston could play a good second quarter, but I like Golden State getting off to a hot start.
PJ, I'm curious, who did you have winning this series going in, and what transpired after Game 1 how much of that has had you go to the lab, or have you changed your opinion at all?
I had Golden State in 6, and I'm going to stick with it. I try not to overreact too much to game
Okay.
one. Way too many people do that. It's one game, and it's what's so fascinating about tonight's game, guys. Golden State fans are going into it, and they're saying, we lost, but Derek White and Al Horford combined for 13 threes. On the flip side, Boston fans are saying we won, and Jason Tatum didn't even play that well. Well,
Right.
I think it's more of Derek White and Al Horford just went crazy. I think Tatum's going to have a great game tonight, but I don't think that the role players for Boston are going to shoot as well as they did. And I just can't see Golden State dropping 2 straight games at home. I think they win tonight. They find a way to win one of those game 3 or 4s in Boston, and I still like them to win in 6.
PJ Glasser here, the BetQL statistician, joining us on Sunday's Bets with Guru Dibs here on the BetQL network. What about series prices? You mentioned Warriors in 6, and you don't want to overreact too much to what happens in game 1. Do you think there's now still good value on the Warriors to win the series, especially at slightly plus money?
I do. I think if you like the Warriors to win this series, game 1 was honestly one of the better things that could happen, because now the price is in your favor and you can jump on them. We know the media drives the narrative so much, and especially when it's the finals and it's the only series going, that's going to be amplified. And after the way Boston looked going into Golden State and winning that game 1, people now are just jumping all over Boston. Golden State's got so much experience. They've been through this before. I would not panic yet if I'm a Golden State fan. And now that you get plus money on that series price, I think now is the time to back the Warriors.
PJ, 2 quick player props for you. I told Dibs anybody could have got 10 assists for the Celtics the way they were shooting the other night, but we saw Tatum with 13. Marcus Smart right now, 5.5 assists, minus 106. And I'm thinking to myself, if the Warriors keep him at bay, I can see him driving and kicking a few times. When you hear that number, what do you think?
5.5 for Smart is interesting. Obviously, I think Golden State's going to make the adjustment with the way Boston shot the 3 in game 1. They're going to run the shooters off the line. But 5.5 is still a pretty big number. I would probably lean under there with Smart. The number kind of feels right, but
Okay.
I think he more so has about 4 or 5 assists tonight.
Last one, Jordan Poole, who we've talked about as a key to this series, 13.5 points, minus 120. I want to blow past and say, heck yeah, PJ, but what do you think when you hear those numbers?
You know, the way Poole was cooking on in the playoffs, that seems like an easy over. He's obviously slowed down a little bit. I would still go the over, though, tonight. You know, I think if the Warriors are going to win, which I think they will, and they're going to play well, that's going to have to correlate to Jordan Poole having about 15 to 20 points. So I would take that over.
PJ Glasser here on Sunday's Bets with Guru and Dibs on the BetQL network. Real quick, the NBA Finals MVP odds updated constantly. Jason Tatum, your favorite, plus 135. Steph Curry, plus 175. Does this make you think that this series really could go either way, and that maybe a 7-game outcome is the one you want to go with?
It definitely could. I mean, these teams are very evenly matched. We saw Golden State in game 1. They came out with a flurry. Steph was draining threes, and Boston just never went away. They were right there. I expect a bunch of these games in this series to be as entertaining as we saw in game 1. I think there's going to be a lot of back and forth throughout this series. You bring up the NBA Finals MVP, though, Market Dibs. And what's so interesting in that, I think there's real value to find the others in this finals. We saw Al Horford and Derek White have a great game 1 because of how good these teams are defensively, and because they're going to make other guys on these 2 teams, the role players, beat them. I think you could see a Jordan Poole winning a finals MVP, or an Al Horford, or a Derek White, or an Andrew Wiggins. Not to say Steph or Tatum or Jaylen Brown or Clay couldn't win it, obviously, but I think there's real value to find some outside guys who really have some good numbers next to their names.
PJ, you just mentioned the guy I want to talk about that went to the University of Cal. When I say the name Jaylen Brown, is he a star, superstar, good player? or do you think this could be his coming out party if he were to put his stamp on this series and Boston were to win?
Jaylen Brown, I would put him in the category of like a DeMar DeRozan, DeJounte Murray. I think he's like right there. I think that his team asks a lot of him. He's a great two-way player. Tatum is obviously the one on that team. I wouldn't put him superstar yet. I think he's an all-star. But okay. Obviously, if he contributes to a finals win, then that changes the narrative on Jaylen Brown.
PJ Glasser here joining us, talking about the NBA Finals. I do want to get your thoughts on the U.S. Open coming up here. It gets underway about 10 days from now. The U.S. Women's Open ongoing. Minjee Lee with a 5-shot lead over Mina Harigay. Lydia Ko sitting 7 back. But for the men, heading to Brookline over Father's Day weekend. Do you have any early thoughts on the upcoming U.S. Open?
It's going to be fun, guys. The U.S. Open is probably my favorite tournament to watch just because of how hard it is to make par at a U.S. Open. You'll hear it all week when the tournament's going on. Par is a good score. Because of that, you tend to lean towards the favorites. It's the hardest course they'll play all year, so the best players usually shine. So you got to look at the Schefflers, you got to look at the Rahms, you got to look at the Cam Smiths, guys that make pars, that can play tough courses. But Brookline obviously really isn't in the U.S. Open rotunda. They don't play it like every 8-10 years. So we don't really know what to expect. A bunch of these guys haven't played Brookline before. So it's going to make for a fun week. But again, this is one of those tournaments where you're really not going to capitalize on a long shot. Like, I don't see Amita Pereira contending like we saw at PGA at the U.S. Open. These courses are just way too hard for that. Jon Rahm won the U.S. Open last year. Bryson DeChambeau the year before that when he was one of the top players in the world. It tends to always go towards the top players. So trying to find a long shot for the U.S. Open, I think, is going to be tough. I think you're going to have to favor the guys towards the top of the board.
PJ, I was going to ask Dibbs the same question. Do you think we see Tiger in this tournament? Has he ruled himself out? Speaking of long shots.
I hope not, Daryl. As a guy who wants to see Tiger win, just like we all do, I hope Tiger doesn't play because I really think that the British Open at St. Andrews is his best opportunity. He's already won there, and the Open Championship is a kind of course that it doesn't favor any particular kind of hitter. The U.S. Open is going to favor the longer guys that just hit it a ton and are great around the greens. But the Open, because the balls run out so much, because there's bunkers and pop bunkers all over the course, it just favors guys that keep the ball in play and will make pars and birdies. So because of that, I think Tiger has a great chance at St. Andrews. The U.S. Open can do a lot of damage to his back and to his legs, and I just don't think it's worth it for Tiger. So I hope he gets his rest and we see him in July at the Open Championship.
That's an astute point. Having played St. Andrews myself, I can tell you that they can't make that course any longer than it already is, and it's not an absolute beast of a course. It's one that absolutely course knowledge, and like PJ said, knowing where the bunkers are, how to avoid them, it becomes huge. Real quick, PJ, we got about 30 seconds left. Do we see Dustin Johnson in the U.S. Open on the heels of him playing in that Saudi-backed event?
It's the $1 million question, Dibbs, and I'm really fascinated to see what happens. My gut's going to tell me no. He's already his sponsor, one of his sponsors, RBC. They already dropped him, and that's the tournament next week, the RBC Canadian Open. I don't think we're going to see him. I think it's too soon after committing to the LIV tournament, so I don't think we're going to see Dustin at the U.S. Open, which is crazy.
Fascinating to watch. The Saudi-backed tour goo that the PGA Tour has basically said, you play in that event, you can't play in our stuff. Dustin Johnson thumbing his nose at his own sponsor to play in this Saudi-backed event. PJ Glasser, always a pleasure. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday, my brother.
Always a pleasure, guys. Thank you. Appreciate it.